Hi, this is a presentation that I gave just recently at the 2011 Google Geo User Summit in Mountain View, California, which was the first of those summits in the US. The presentation is about a project that we've been doing at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, which is basically about building the entire campus, at least the buildings, in 3D, and then putting them into Google Earth. The entire project was done using SketchUp for the building modeling, and then 3D Warehouse, which is the intermediary to put it into Google Earth. My name is Alex Schreier. I'm a lecturer at Building and Construction Technology at the University of Massachusetts, and I teach a bunch of courses, among which there is a CAD course, BCT 420, in which we use SketchUp. And this has been a great project for my students to apply their SketchUp knowledge. We have done this over 2 semesters initially, where we started modeling the entire campus and have now expanded it to going back and fixing buildings that didn't look right and so on. So when I was putting together this presentation, I realized that it doesn't make sense to talk about 3D in a 2D environment like PowerPoint or the like. And so I did this presentation in SketchUp. All right, let me start by looking at what UMass Amherst looks like. This is basically the campus. If you look at it on a map, the distance from top to bottom on this map is about 1.5 miles. UMass has 1,400 acres, and if you look at this map, you'll see there are a bunch of buildings. UMass actually has about 600 structures. Some of those are small structures and so on. So if you look at the more prominent ones, the big ones, then you come down to about 200 plus ones that are very important. This is a little clearer when we look at this on an aerial photography. There you go, there's the campus. Just to give you an overview, if you haven't been here, on the right side of the image, there are the residences. On the left side, there are athletic fields. Towards the bottom, there is the arts end of campus. Towards the top is the sciences. Although everything's pretty mixed there also. Dorms, both on north and south end of the campus. So when we looked at this project in Google Earth, there wasn't much there. The only buildings that were there was the library that you see right there in the center, and then there was a little church, but nothing else. And given that this is a big campus, it would make sense to put the rest of the buildings in there as well. This was helped along a little bit by Google's Model Your Campus competition, where we entered, and unfortunately didn't win, but we entered the competition with our buildings. Now when we looked at the buildings, of course we had to split up the entire campus, pick the buildings that are most important, but nevertheless we ended up having this many buildings, 200 and a bit, to do. So we give the students, basically let the students pick out the buildings they wanted to do, and actually managed to do most of those. When you go to Google Earth, you'll still see that there are some missing, and we're still filling those in. Some are actually not modeled too well, so we have to redo those. But overall, actually, it gives a very nice 3D picture of the campus. Now let me give you a bit of an overview of how these buildings look like and how we modeled them. So this is our library. Arguably, from what I've heard, is the tallest library in the US. It's a tower. That's geometrically just a square that's vertically extruded. So this one, like many other campus buildings, are pretty easy to do. We just draw the footprint, we pull it up, then we'll apply photo textures to the sides. SketchUp is really good at doing that. You take a picture of the side of the facade, and then you put it on the facade. You can actually repeat it multiple times in the case of the library here. And you just simply upload this building. Having said that, there are other ones that are a little more complex too. We have a bunch of modernist concrete buildings. Here's one. This is the Fine Arts Center. which of course has lots of different angles. For the most part, it's also just extrusions, but it has these different planes, different angles, different heights actually. And so that was a little trickier to do. One thing that you can see here is actually that we used repeating textures instead of photo textures. It wouldn't make sense to photograph every single surface of this building and try to match colors and match everything and so on. So what we did was we went to a photograph of a surface, we took out the repeating part, which was the formwork type pattern, and applied it to the entire building. For the most part, that worked pretty well. And then when we fly over it, now you'll see that on the other side, actually, there are some windows that were modeled differently. You see there, and then here on the right, basically. Then we have a bunch of older buildings. And the tricky thing with older buildings is that they have build-ons, they have chimneys, they have dormers, and all kinds of funny geometry. And so that ended up usually in the hands of the better, more experienced modelers. And this is a great example. This is our university club. I think it's the oldest building in Amherst. And there we used a mixture between actual textures, photo textures, and some of SketchUp supplied textures, which give you a nice clean looking roof, for example, in this case. Now we were helped a little bit along because we got the building footprints from campus planning. They were very nice supplying those to us. We got those as a DWG file. We extracted them, loaded them into SketchUp, and used them as basis for our extrusions, which worked pretty well on the horizontal level. The heights of the buildings were still estimated, but in the meantime we got more accurate height information, so we're going back right now and fixing those up as needed. So let me show you how this looks in Google Earth. You can actually do this all yourself. You can just open up Google Earth and type in our zip code 01003, and you will fly right to our campus. Browse around, make sure the 3D building layer is turned on so that you can see everything pop up right in front of you. So this is one of our main views. You see the Fine Arts Center on the right, you see the tower a bit to the left there, and some of the other buildings. There's a little chapel, of course. You also see that some buildings are still missing here in the bottom left corner. There's still some to do. But other than that, it looks really nice. Some of the older buildings, in this case, these are dorms, turned out to be really well done. So there's a nice little tower and so on that you can see here. Nevertheless, there are a bunch of issues that we kept running into, and this is something that just comes along. A common problem was that, especially for the more complex buildings, geometry wasn't done perfectly. So that is something that needs to be fixed, where it really helps having the better modelers take on the more challenging buildings. Then you see here texture, photo texturing, especially again for complex geometry, curved geometry and so on, is a little tricky and needs to be done right in order to get a good model. Then you see on the bottom left that the terrain sometimes does funny things too. This comes purely through Google Earth, which is a case when there's a drop-off, as in this case, or we actually have a construction site that still lingers in Google Earth that has disappeared a long time ago. Something else that we've been noticing is we've got such a big campus, and it would be much more realistic to actually have trees on there. So one of the next projects that we're tackling is trees, because buildings are so far apart that it still looks pretty empty even without trees, although we have a lot of buildings on there. Alrighty, so overall, that's where we are right now, and you don't see all the buildings in this view here. This is really just in SketchUp, just an overview. Again, go to Google Earth, browse to our zip code 01003, and take a look what you can see at UMass. We're going back and fixing up buildings. We're putting in new buildings all the time, and it's been a great project for my students and me. Now, let's finish this off with another mind-bending flyover. And I thank you for listening. And if you have any questions at this point, of course, you have to send me an email. But I hope you liked it. Thanks.